Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to continue talking about earthquakes, or rather, today we did continue talking about earthquakes. This is actually our last class on earthquakes. Other than next class is going to be about tsunamis, and when we talk about tsunamis, we have to talk about earthquakes for a little bit. But for the most part, this is our final class on earthquakes. Again, this is part of our natural hazards unit. So this class and the next few weeks of classes are all going to be on different natural hazards. So today's warm-up, if you're in second, fourth, or my fifth period class, the warm-up was how can we mitigate or reduce the effects of earthquakes? This was discussed in Wednesday's asynchronous reading. So that was week 27 asynchronous assignment, which you all should have done. If you haven't, you still can, and you definitely need to. And so for this question, please use your own thoughts and words. Avoid using Google. If you are in my seventh period class, you were to fill in the causes and effects boxes for earthquakes on the natural hazards graphic organizer on Google Classroom. Again, for this question, please use your own thoughts and words. Avoid using Google. You only had to fill in causes and effects for earthquakes. And by the end of today, you're going to, and this goes for all my classes, by the end of today, you're going to have all four of these boxes filled in, only for earthquakes. We haven't talked about volcanoes, tsunamis, hurricanes, or tornadoes. So you do not have to fill those in. You should not fill those in. We haven't talked about them. So you have nothing to put in there yet. All right. So today we did the warm-up, and then we briefly reviewed the mitigating earthquakes reading. After that, we watched some videos about predicting earthquakes. And then in none of my classes did we have time to do the KQL chart or the exit slip, so you may disregard that part of the agenda. Today's goal is by the end of today, you will be able to find patterns in earthquake data, and you will be able to answer this focus question, which is what causes an earthquake, what are the effects of earthquakes, and how can we mitigate those effects? So right behind my face right here is the word mitigate. And again, mitigate means reduce or lessen or decrease. All right, so we started out today by completing the mitigate the effect box on this chart. And all of these effects came from the reading. So some different ways that we could mitigate the effects of climate change were if we were to, one, we could make sure that people are prepared, like make sure they have fire extinguishers. We can also build buildings with concrete and steel, or just steel. And that's because concrete by itself is pretty brittle, which means that if you shake it or if you bend it a little bit, it will crack and break. Steel, on the other hand, is pretty strong and flexible. So even if it bends a little bit, it can snap right back, or the entire building won't collapse, which is ideal for an earthquake when buildings are shaking a lot. We can also build shorter buildings out of wood. Wood is also a pretty flexible material, relatively flexible material, but wood is not really appropriate for larger buildings. Next, as we learned when we watched the Oklahoma video, we can reduce the amount of wastewater that we leave in the ground after drilling for oil. So when we drill for oil, we actually pump a bunch of water into the ground to push all that oil to the surface. The problem is that all that water we're leaving in the ground is still pretty slippery, and so it can cause like old fault lines to activate. So old places where the land was starting to slide now can slide because they're slippery, and that can cause earthquakes. Finally, we can use pipes that turn off when they shake. So in some cities, like Louisville, for example, we pipe natural gas throughout the city. And we use natural gas in our kitchens mostly, and in our furnaces. But in our kitchens, we use it to heat our stoves. So when you turn on the gas, there's a flame that comes up, and that's what you use to cook your food. Or at least that's how it is in my house. And the problem is that during an earthquake, the pipes that carry that natural gas can actually break, leaking natural gas into people's houses and into buildings. And if an earthquake causes one tiny little spark, suddenly the whole building explodes or catches on fire, or both. which is a very serious secondary effect of earthquakes. So if we use pipes that turn off when they shake, we can actually we can reduce some of the risk of those fires. So that was mitigate the effects. You should go ahead and add these things to your natural hazards graphic organizer. Again, by the end of today, or the end of this lesson, you should have all 4 of these boxes filled out. You should not have anything else in these other boxes, unless you're watching this video in the future, in which case, hello, future. Yeah, after today, after March 12th, 2021, you should only have these 4 boxes filled out. We haven't talked about anything else. Right? And so after that, we watched 2 videos that I would like you to watch on your own. I'm not going to play them here because they're in the slides, I don't need to watch these videos for a 6th time. But one video is on the 1964 Alaska earthquake, which was a huge earthquake that happened in Alaska in 1964. And the other video is about, it's sort of answering the question, can we predict earthquakes? And after you watch that video about can we predict earthquakes, I want you to go ahead, well, after we watched the video in class, we took a look at this next box, this 3rd box, which was predicting or warning about earthquakes. And watch that video. It's really interesting. But the summary of the video is that we can use past earthquake data to guess when another earthquake will happen. For example, the Great Alaska earthquake, that seems to happen every 630 years. So we can guess that 630 years from the last big earthquake is when the next big earthquake will come. But the problem is that's kind of an average. So the next big earthquake could come 500 years from now, or it could come 700 years from now. So we can guess approximately when that big earthquake will happen, maybe between 500 and 700 years from now, but we can't say when it's going to happen. We can't say, it's not like the news, like weather forecast. We can't say, oh, tomorrow morning at 8:46 a.m., there will be a 7.3 magnitude earthquake. We can't say that because we just don't know when exactly it's going to happen. So after you watch that video, go ahead and add this information to your natural hazards graphic organizer. Again, for the 3rd time, you should only have these 4 boxes filled out and nothing else, unless you're watching this from the future. But that was all that we did today. And if you have any questions, please leave me a private comment on Google Classroom. But otherwise, I hope you have a good weekend, and I'll see you soon.